Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.
Welcome to the Sports Hot Seat. I'm Mitch Garber with Mitch Melnick and third-time return guest Elliot Price. We're going to do a little preseason baseball show today. This show will be aired, I believe, day after the opener in Houston.
Right. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
How you doing?
Not bad.
Not going to be as busy in the booth this year?
No,
unfortunately.
we've got 10 less games than last year, which was, 12 less games in our first year, but so far we're still on.
And a new partner, Bobby Winkles, has retired. He's playing golf in La Quinta, California, and you're going to work with Rich Griffin.
I'm sorry to see Bobby go. You kind of get used to working with the same person. You finally work out all the things that are a little bit of a problem in the beginning, and you can't find a nicer guy than Bobby. But I've had an opportunity to work with Rich when Bobby's done some television, when Ken Singleton started late the first year, and who knows more about the ball club than Rich.
And funny.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun. We try not, I mean, when we open up the microphones, the advice from Danny Gallivan always is right out there. Have fun. That's what we try to do.
That's what we do. We used to work together, you know,
yeah, I know.
on the air, and that was our attitude. And some people thought we laughed too much.
Well, you know, there's not enough of that, I don't find, on radio, especially in sports. A lot of guys in suits. Well, not here, but a lot of guys in suits.
I wear one every morning.
A lot of guys in suits, not having fun. Very little humor, very straight. And I think that you and Rich, despite the fact you won't be on that often, I know that you would like to work as many games as possible. And people should know that.
And Dave knows that, too.
Yeah, but you really love, you love what you do. You love doing the play-by-play, and you have to do as many games as you could.
Well, actually,
really.
I told Dave a couple years ago I was putting a little cyanide in his coffee every day. He said, don't worry, it won't take that long. Dave, I'm waiting.
No, but you're not doing as many games this year. But seriously speaking, well, not unseriously speaking, with Rich, do you think you're going to have sort of a different approach than you had with Bobby? Bobby had the experience. Bobby was a baseball man. Rich is more like the rest of us, I guess, just grew up loving baseball.
I think that there's an obvious difference. Bobby was involved in baseball and had an idea of the players' minds, the coaches' minds, the managers for, 40, 50 years. Rich has had an opportunity to be close to Expos, so he should have stories from the ball club for a long period of time, and I think he'll have a better idea of some of my jokes that might have gone over Bobby's head.
Before we get into baseball, I want to mention something else, because Stephen Dubinsky, who we had on 2 weeks ago, mentioned that he saw you on ESPN2 doing the Pee Wee hockey tournament in Quebec. You were doing that with?
I did that with Craig Minervy, and I did another one, one game that ran on TSN and on a local network. Transworld Television ran them throughout Canada with Ted Blackman. And it really was an experience. I'd never done television before, and it really was a lot of fun. Some talented players. You consider the players that have come through there over the years, and I think we saw a couple of kids this year that we can look forward to. One of them is a pretty good baseball player, too, from Sault Ste. Marie by the name of Rico Fata, and you'll want to remember that name.
What I couldn't believe when I saw the kids is when I was 13.
How big they are.
Yeah.
But weren't there kids in the hockey league that you played in that
just
were?
a couple.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
Maybe
there were short kids in Chamonix. I don't know, but that's what
saw
struck me.
A lot of big kids. There was a goaltender, 6'3", a couple of kids from the Chicago team that were over 6 feet. Some big kids with some weight on them. But it's amazing. There was this little kid that played for a Quebec team who weighed 58 pounds. So
hey, I was 80 pounds, 5 feet.
You're still 80 pounds
at 16 years old. So I don't even want to think back to 13. I know you were a small kid, though. I mean,
Yes,
you're a big guy. You're over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
You are?
I am over 200 pounds, yes.
Wow.
He's a heavyweight.
5'10", 200 pounds.
Media heavyweight wrestling champion.
That's why he wears the big jacket.
All right, let's get into some baseball talk now.
Okay.
You don't like to take pleasure in the misfortune of other people, but if you're a diehard Expo fan, you really don't care if Ron Gant ever plays again for the Atlanta Braves. And you cross your fingers and hope for the best for John Kruk We all do, because he's one of the great people in baseball. But the Phillies are going to be without John Kruk until at least late May. They traded Terry Mulholland. This is a real opening for the Expos, who have stressed the importance of getting off to a good start.
I didn't hear any tears last year when John Wetland kicked the screen and was out the first month of the season. Nobody in the National League East was crying, "Oh, poor Expos." That's the way it goes, and who knows what will happen to the Expos as far as injuries are concerned. We're at the point now where the Expos, if I were in the position of deciding injuries this year, I would hope everybody would get injured. The Expos have as much minor league talent rising to the AAA level as anybody, and I think, along with the Atlanta Braves, they can sustain some injuries that a team like the Philadelphia Phillies cannot. I think Terry Mulholland hurts them an awful lot, not only what he can do for the Phillies, but what he did against the Expos. I mean, he shut them down, shut down the running game like no other pitcher in the National League, and not only am I glad he's not in Philadelphia, he's out of the National League.
We talked about this last week. This Expo team is not the best Expo team we've ever seen on the field on paper, but probably the deepest team. And, you know, you make a good point. You don't hope for injuries, but at least you know that if someone goes down in the outfield, you've got 4 or 5 guys back there that can take his place, and that includes Curtis Pride and Rondell White. Just a bunch of guys that can come in, and you know that they can do a job. Maybe not as good a job, obviously, as Marquise or Larry Walker, but a very deep team in the infield and in the outfield this year.
Yeah, I think the only question mark as far as depth is concerned is at catcher. You look at the bench and you can pull a Randy Milligan off the bench to go deep late in the ball game if in fact Cliff Floyd becomes your everyday first baseman. You have some strength in the middle infield. You can go to a Freddie Benavides. You have Lou Fraser, so you've got some speed, you've got some power, and it looks like you've got some bats off the bench as well, which is, as a group, probably the best they've had in years.
Milligan's another factor, though. You know, they played very well against the Atlanta Braves last season. Milligan eats up lefties, and when they throw Glavine and Avery and I guess Merker, he's going to be a big factor. I think he's an overlooked guy. People should remember that Milligan, I think, is going to be a big contributor in '94.
Let's talk about the catching for a second, because Tim Laker has become a pretty big disappointment. Last year, he was sick during the offseason. He came in looking a little lighter, looking a little weaker, and sort of played that way during the season. Now Louis Pujols is upset that he's changing his catching stance. Harper's upset that he's changed his hitting stance, and the Expos go out and get Lenny Webster. That sort of makes, you know, Tim Laker's future questionable. He's not happy about it. You got Tim Spear back there, Joe Siddle. You talk about depth at catcher. We got numbers there. But what about the pickup of Lenny Webster, obviously to take the place of Tim Laker?
Well, by now we know, because this will run after the season starts. But Webster fits in anywhere from 2 to 5. If you look at Laker's position, he was no better than 4th coming into training camp. And because, I mean, you would say that he's closer to 2nd than 4th, but the 3rd guy makes the team as a backup, as someone who can help things and doesn't necessarily get to hit that much. Let's remember that Tim Spear had an excellent second half last year, and I want to know, you know, how much a person concentrate on the fact that his father passed away, and his father was dying through the first half of the season. And after that was over, and he went home and he buried his dad, and he dedicated the rest of the season to that memory. He hit pretty well, so you would think that the Expos would have a decent backup if he's the guy that's going to be there.
But Laker was clearly rushed. I mean, he hit, what, 240 at Double-A, and they wanted him to make the jump to the majors. That's tough.
It's tough. It happens to a lot of guys. You look, in some instances, it can ruin some players. Years ago, the Texas Rangers brought up David Clyde because he was a local product and a first-round draft choice, and they wanted him to pitch in front of a big crowd, and he never did make it. The Expos rushed Baylor Moore. There are some players that you rush and they just have the makeup. Maybe Delino arrived a little bit early, but he just took to it right away, and it has to do with your own personal makeup, maybe even more than the tools you have when you arrive.
So what about Cliff Floyd in that vein? What about Rondell White in that vein? Is Floyd maybe being rushed?
I think that Rondell White is a different case. White's a year ahead of Cliff Floyd, and he has made the gradual progression. Floyd has moved along quickly. The one thing in his favor, and it showed last year at spring training when he was, if not the last guy to go, the second last, is that he fits in real well with the big guys. He's not intimidated, and in the attitude from where he's come from, I think he's a pretty strong character, and that will help him. I think he should be more concerned about his tools at the major league level than his attitude. Yeah,
you mentioned Delino DeShields. That, to me, is the big question. Again, this is being taped a couple of weeks before the start of the season, so maybe things will change, but Felipe Alou said that Grissom is going to hit 3rd and Lansing is going to lead off. I would imagine that if Moises Alou is healthy, that it would make more sense to have him hitting 3rd, Grissom leading off, and maybe Lansing hit 2nd.
I would think that's the way Felipe sees it. He didn't want to catch himself in a position where who knows how long Moises is going to be out. Who knows, he may have even played yesterday for all we know. But as far as the top of the lineup is concerned, Felipe wants to make sure that Grissom's going to drive in some runs from the beginning to have some offense out of that third spot. Your best hitter hits third. I believe Moises is the team's best overall hitter, but if he's not there, someone's got to take up the slack. Someone has to hit in front of Larry Walker. And as much as we'd love to see the top of the lineup a little bit more offensive, I think he's left without a choice till Moises comes back.
Keep in mind that no manager in the major leagues used more combinations and permutations in the batting order last season than Felipe did. And he may start doing that again. There's some guys he has to see. What is Floyd going to do, and where does he fit in comfortably? Mike Lansing, not a natural leadoff hitter. He may be a good leadoff hitter. He can steal bases. But I think that Felipe has at least the talent to play with and juggle this lineup.
Even if Cliff Floyd does the kind of job that they're hoping that he does, we're still going to see Randy Milligan, I hope, on a regular basis against left-handed pitching.
Absolutely.
And Felipe likes to move the guys in and out, and that's the most important thing to keep 25 people happy.
He likes to run the offense, too, from the dugout. He's tremendous at knowing when to steal. The Expos don't get thrown out under Felipe Alou. They have always run, but they don't get thrown out. He knows when to run. He likes to play hit and run.
Maybe even better is the way he controls that part of the game from the opposition. Felipe is in total control when it comes to pitch outs, when it comes to throwing to first base, when it comes to all that stuff. And the Expos have done well, and they've had to, because let's be honest, in the last couple of years, they haven't had a catcher that throws very well. They have to keep their eye on that area of the game to help out Darren Fletcher, unless he's improved since the last time we saw him.
Speaking of Randy Milligan, by the way, there's a guy, you talked a lot last year about the Expos' necessity of picking up a $600,000 to $700,000 a year guy. I would think that Randy Milligan would fit right into the mold of the player that you were talking about.
He's exactly what we were talking about. He's exactly the equivalent of what the Phillies did with Thompson and Intavilla and Eisenreich last year.
One can only hope that the situation works out as it did the last time they did something like this. The guy they paid over $1 million to didn't do a darn thing, but it worked out pretty well for Galarraga because it got him going. The Expos were so nervous at the beginning of that season because Galarraga had a terrible training camp, as Floyd's not having a terrible camp, but Galarraga had a horrible camp, and they still had him making the team, and they went out and they bought Jason Thompson, paid him over $1 million, and Thompson was gone quickly.
2 weeks.
Galarraga homered in the opener at Atlanta, and the rest was history after that. But it gave them something else to think about, and it gave them an option. And
keep in mind that Floyd didn't play all that much AAA last year, and when he did, he struggled. And he started to come on at the end, but he did struggle at AAA.
He also didn't play a whole lot of first base. It's something else for him to think about. It's, I would imagine, much easier when the ball's coming at you from 250 feet away than when it's coming at you from 90 feet, and there are some pretty big left-handed hitters. And imagine what it's like to stare down Fred McGriff, you know?
Well, the three veterans, sort of veterans, that the Expos picked up, I think are going to help this team a lot in different ways. Neither of the three of them, a superstar. Milligan, Reddy, and Benavides. Benavides is going to be, I think, a welcome addition to this team. Reddy was last year, and he's showing it in spring training, although I don't know what he's done, like you said, in the last 2 weeks of spring, but looks pretty good. And Randy Milligan.
From what we've heard about Randy Milligan, that may be his best attribute, what he does for the club in the clubhouse. He's played in Baltimore, he's played in Cincinnati, he was a member of the New York Mets system and the Pirates system, and everywhere he has gone, those have been the reports on him, and really that's something that's needed in the clubhouse. Delino is a loss in that area. And it's really tough for a player to come in and take control of a clubhouse unless he walks in with the respect that Milligan already has, and that should really help.
Let's talk about Delino DeShields. What has to happen this year to make this trade not be as bad as many people say that it was?
Pedro wins 15 games.
Well, I don't agree with you. I mean, if Pedro wins 15 games, a lot of other pitchers you could have gotten for less than Delino could win 12 or 11. That's only 4 games more that you're getting out of Pedro, and I got to think that
Delino lost the division by 3 games last year.
I got to think that Delino wins you 4 or 5 games himself.
Well, that
more during a season.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue against the attributes of Delino DeShields, but I think if Pedro Martinez in his first year as a starter in the majors wins 15 games, then that's what they're looking for. 15 games, about 200 innings. That's what he has to do.
I think that the biggest hurt as far as the trade of Delino DeShields is concerned is the infield defense. You're already dealing with 3 youngsters. You have to think that third base is going to be better overall because Frank Bullock started there last year. You have to think that first base is going to be better overall because I think both you guys played there last year and they're thinking of giving me a shot. Cordero has to improve defensively at shortstop, so the loss you take is at second base. The unit coming together is very important, but you look at the overall scheme of thing of the Expos, and that has to worry you more than anything else, is the infield defense. If that's fine, I think the Delino trade is fine. If it's not, then you've got to worry.
Well, you know, Mike Lansing told me the other day that, you know, one of the main differences this year is he never had a chance last season to really play a position. He played third, he played short, he played second. We've seen his gun arm from third, we've seen it from short. Doesn't really need it from second, but it doesn't hurt. I think that if this guy gets to play, like he will, after 50 games or 40 games, he's going to be really comfortable there. He has shown some signs of being a pretty good defensive baseball player, except that every game he was switching positions, and I'm sure, I've never changed positions every day. It's got to be difficult to go from third to short to second and back and forth.
I think he looked most comfortable as a shortstop and looks like he could be a major league shortstop.
Says he wants to be a shortstop.
Well, there's your problem right there. The Expos were talking about moving Cordero to third base, but geez, look what's coming up behind him. Sean Berry had a decent year last year. You know, in less than 300 at-bats, he had 12, 13 home runs. He stole some bases. He runs pretty well for a big guy. And you got Shane Andrews coming up right behind him. So you really don't have a choice. If you want Mike Lansing to play, right now he's got to play second base.
And Cordero's got to stay at short.
Absolutely. He's got to play there every day, and you decide somewhere along the line what you're going to do with him. But as long as he's going to be with this team, he's got to be your major league shortstop. He's got to play every day.
How many errors did he have last year? 39 or 37?
No, it was about 35.
I think
35.
I think that's pretty common, though, for a shortstop in his first year in the major leagues. You look at guys like Royce Clayton in San Francisco and Jose Offerman in Los Angeles, and look at their stats last year after they'd been in the majors for a year and a half. Check out what they did in the first half of last year and see how they settled down finally after getting some experience at a very tough position in the major leagues for a young player.
Well, I mean, we're going through all the positions. I don't think we have to go through the outfield very long if Moises is healthy. One of the best outfields in baseball. What we haven't touched on really is the pitching staff. And that's where we're going to either look very smart or not very smart, because we're taping the show 3 weeks before the end of spring training, and we'll see what's going to happen.
Okay, at this point we don't know who's in the number 5 spot. We have a pretty good idea 1 to 4. As starting a season in comparison to last year, no matter what, you've got to say this is a better starting staff. Last year, after Dennis Martinez and Kenny Hill, there wasn't a whole lot. You started the season with huge question marks, 3, 4, and 5. What was it?
Bottenfield was in there?
Bottenfield, Nabolts, and Jimmy Jones.
Yeah.
So you got to think that from 3 to 5, and while you don't use your 5th pitcher very much in the first month or so, your top 4 guys look pretty good. If Pedro can settle down and learn how to be a starter again, learn how to pace himself, they say he's got great stuff. That sounds good to me.
You also have an unhappy Mel Rojas.
You got a lot of unhappy players. That's baseball.
I don't think you have a lot of
unhappy
unhappy
players. Pedro Martinez.
Moises Alou was unhappy last year,
That's
and he had
right.
a great year, and he's making 1.4 now.
But Pedro Martinez is not unhappy being a starting pitcher. He's
No, I
unhappy about
understand
other
that.
things. I'm talking about a guy who doesn't want to do this job. It's a lot worse to not want to do the job you're doing.
It all comes down to this. I think it has more to do with what Mel thinks he can create for himself in the future as far as dollars and cents are concerned than anything else. Baseball is a game of biding your time and waiting for your moment. Every player has the opportunity when he becomes a free agent to do whatever he wants with his career. When Mel Rojas reaches the point where he's a free agent, well, he can start shopping himself around as
Let
a
me
closer.
put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Because of the timing of this taping. If the Expos do in fact trade Mel Rojas before the start of the season, what would they be looking for? They can get something
Starting
decent.
pitcher.
A starting pitcher.
Absolutely. They say you never have enough starters. If we're sitting here right now and we're questioning who's going to be in the number 5 spot, that means that there's room for improvement.
But
Denny Boucher must have the
considering the
insight.
situation in this city and how well he pitched last year, I would assume that Boucher is going to start.
I would hope that Denny Boucher starts because he's the best 5th pitcher in spring training, not because of his situation in the city. Right now, as we speak, the Expos have a huge question as far as having a left-hander in their bullpen is concerned. They do not have one right now. Butch Henry's pitching all right, but Looney got
kids,
sent to the
yeah.
minor leagues. He didn't make it. And the rest of your bullpen, while strong, is all right-handed. And if all you're going to ask
While
from
strong, I mean, there's some guys in there that I hope are in Ottawa, not in
well, I'm talking
Jeff
about
Shaw
John Wetland,
being
Mel
one of them.
Rojas. You're talking about a 10th pitcher. I'm talking about the guys you're looking to after the 6th inning to put the game away for you in succession. You'd have to think that Scott Rojas and Wetland are pretty good. And if you have a left-hander that can get the occasional guy out, you're talking about the last pitcher on the team.
Where's
which
John
means-
Candelaria? Is he around? Bob McClure?
I think Candy signed somewhere.
McClure.
He told us
McClure's
5 years ago he was retiring.
Yeah.
And if you get-
McClure's a coach somewhere, I think, now, right?
I think he stayed with the Marlins.
Yeah.
If you get a fifth pitcher, Denny Boucher probably be a pretty good relief pitcher. I mean, he's shown decent stuff, and he really has shown it for 6 innings or 5 innings rather than 9 or 8. Might be a pretty good long reliever. And I think that's probably where he'll end up one day. I don't know that Denny Boucher is a fifth starter for the rest of his career.
I would think if the Expos go with 10 pitchers, the left-hander in the bullpen has to be the guy who's going to come in just to face the lefty.
I'm more concerned about Hill and Facero than I am about a guy like Reeder. I think Reeder, what you see now is what he's going to be the rest of his career. You put him in a rocking chair on the mound.
Are we concerned about Kenny Hill because of his health?
I'm
Or his
concerned because
consistency.
there seems to be a problem with him every year, and he is supposedly the ace, although Facero maybe is the ace. I don't know who started yesterday, but one of those two guys. Facero, this is his first year
Right.
as a major league starter.
It was something that we all discussed during a New Year's Eve show we did on the radio station, in that we're looking at a lot of guys who've had one good year, and that's a scary thought. You got Kirk Reeder, first time around. You got Jeff Facero, first time as a starter. You got Pedro Martinez, who's going to be first time as a starter. You're looking at Mike Lansing, who's going to be an everyday player for the first time in his career. You're looking for Darren Fletcher to repeat what he did in the second half last year. You're looking for Sean Berry to continue to improve off his first year in the major leagues. So you're really asking for a lot of people to continue to improve and go along the lines that they've established for themselves in a very short period of time. And that's a bit of a scary thought.
This is verbatim, though, what we'd said on this show last year, spring training edition, before the season started. Well, you're asking for Delino DeShields, and you're asking for, I mean,
But
yeah.
you are. I mean, you don't
have a lot of old guys on this team that are, proven stars. Ken Griffey's not on this team. He's not going to come up with Marquise Grissom and Larry Walker. You know what you're going to get out of these guys.
Which Griffey?
Or Moises.
He's younger than the Expos.
I think most of the guys that Elliot mentioned, I think most people have a pretty good idea what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You don't see too many of them crapping out, bottoming out in 1994.
You mentioned Kirk Reeder. I don't know if you saw what Joe Kerrigan said about Kirk Reeder. He said that he and Tom Glavine have the best control in baseball. And that's,
Along with Bob Tewksbury.
pretty lofty quote from
Well,
Kerrigan.
you
And
just look at the numbers right through
Yeah.
his professional career, and you could see it. And he's got such an easy, fluid motion. I don't think he's ever going to get hurt. And I'm looking forward to watching him, and I know Elliot's looking forward to broadcasting him because he's going to get home early.
Yeah, that's always nice. We could use 5 of those guys, and I don't know why they don't do something to speed up the game. If you sit there watching a baseball game on television, get out your stopwatch and click between pitches, especially when there's a guy on base. And there's a rule.
But it's not just the pitchers. There's guys like Dykstra,
Well,
and hitters who
it's
step
not
out
the
every
pitchers
pitch.
because they're not in control of deciding how much time between pitches. If the umpire wants him to move faster, he can do it. It's within his jurisdiction.
what about Jeff Facero? He showed some pretty good stuff early spring. I can't say what he's done late spring. He had a bad outing in mid-spring. That's where we are right now.
I really would hate to compare what a guy does during spring training and what happens during a regular season. Facero not only has a good fastball, but he's got a lot of different breaking pitches, and they're touch pitches, something that takes time to come to. You'll notice that the curveballers and the guys who throw tight sliders will have a lot more trouble during spring training than the guys who just blow the fastball behind hitters. And from what we saw, I mean, it's hard to believe that this man he had a pretty good short career as an Expo reliever. But this was, he was among the top pitchers in the league through the second half, and it's tough to put that back on. You only wish he could have continued on from last year because the break means you have to start all over
He's
again.
very tough to hit against. I
Yes,
think
he is.
most of the Braves
That's
that one
Randy
game
Tiemann.
Randy. Maybe that's well, he didn't get to go to the fantasy camp, so he had to do something, right? But the night he struck out 13 Braves, most of the Braves in the clubhouse afterwards were mentioning that's the best stuff they had seen from anybody.
He was the only pitcher that pitched for the Expos last year to strike out 10 or more, and he did it more than once. And what did he make? 10 starts? 12 starts. He was unbelievable. He was as good as any pitcher in the National League during that stretch, and that's saying something. To repeat it, that's tough to say.
You mentioned the fifth starter earlier. Another name that will probably come up at some point is Gabe White, who Felipe likes very much, lefty. Are there any other names that are not going to start the season with the Expos, but we are going to see at some point?
I'll tell you somebody that's had a pretty good camp very quietly is Gil Heredia. And down the stretch last year, they put him into some situations. If you're looking, maybe not as a starter, but as a long guy, if you carry an 11th pitcher, he may even be the 10th guy right now, except that leaves you
I'd take
void
him
of
over
a
Jeff
left-hander.
Shaw.
Yeah.
So would I. Joey Eichen's name is also one that we hear a lot. We're waiting for Joey Eichen to arrive. And this might be a year early for Joey Eichen.
Yeah.
Heredia seems to have good stuff and a good attitude, and he's had a good camp. And it's amazing. I mean, if Jeff Vicero can turn the corner at age 30 as he did last year, who's to say that somebody else can't at this point?
Let me put you on the spot, Mitch. You said earlier this month that Les Lancaster will make this baseball team. Is he on the team today?
That was before an 8-run inning.
It's only an 8-run inning in
Well,
spring.
the guy's had a proven track record of being a very good middle reliever, except for 1 year in Detroit where a lot of pitchers have bad
Yeah,
years.
yeah. Is he on the team right now?
I don't
put
think
it this
so.
way.
You don't think so?
Roger Clemens gets away with an 8-run inning, okay?
4 of them were earned. There were 3 errors that inning.
He got
behind
rocked for a
Lancaster.
pair of long
But,
home runs.
Yeah,
We only have a few minutes left.
I don't think so.
From a playoff perspective, if there was no wild card this year, which thankfully there is, I believe we'd be sitting here, and probably each of us would say the Expos have a shot, a legitimate shot at winning.
If there wasn't a wild card this year, maybe the Atlanta Braves wouldn't be in the Expos division. You'd be saying
True.
the Expos are heads and tails above what's behind them right now.
So then with the wild card, it almost, evens
Makes
things
it
out.
tougher.
Oh, well, no, it doesn't make it tougher. It almost evens things out. The Braves come over and there's a wild card, so it almost evens things out. It still makes it.
But the Phillies sort of came out of nowhere last year. You know that under the current setup, and despite the fact the Expos had 94 wins last year, they wouldn't have made the playoffs.
But we should point out there's some writers. Jeff Blair, I believe, Jack Romanelli of the Gazette did pick the Phillies to win the National League East.
Picked them second.
I picked the Expos. You picked the Expos.
I picked Phillies, Expos, Cardinals.
Last year I picked the Expos to win, and Philippe Alou said anybody who picked the Expos to win last year was crazy.
Oh, I picked Expos, Phillies, Cardinals. I'm sorry.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. All right.
But I picked them based on the fact that I didn't think the Phillies were going to be that strong, and I really projected as Jack Clark being their first baseman. I really thought he would add something. Who knew about Frank Bullock? I wonder if Bullock was in the lineup for the Pirates yesterday.
That's interesting. The Phillies, of course, I think more than anything else, you mentioned John Kruk and Terry Mulholland, they have a huge question mark in their bullpen. They did have one solid member last year, and say what you want about Mitch Williams giving up the home run to Joe Carter, but he was a guy who you could give the ball to, and he'd put it in it wasn't pretty, but he'd put it into the bank for you, and they don't have that guy right now, and you can't win without that.
All right, National League East, give me your top 3.
Braves, Expos, and boy, anybody. It's not very good behind that. The Phillies are the best of the bunch, but what's left now? The Mets and the Marlins?
Yeah, Braves, Expos, Phillies. Yeah,
Braves, Expos, Phillies.
and I agree with Elliot. Braves and Expos very tight, and Phillies a couple of notches below that.
And then another drop off to what's left.
I'll buck the trend, Expos, Braves, Phillies.
Okay, the problem is what happens behind the other division winners.
Right.
Can the Expos get in if they finish behind the Braves? Because Houston and St. Louis look like they're going to be strong in the Central.
Cincinnati.
And Cincinnati, the Dodgers are improved, and
Giants
the Giants
are
have a
great.
pretty good team.
Giants
You know,
are
if the
great team.
Rockies get any pitching at all, that's a good lineup they've got.
The Expos are in the playoffs this year. It'd be nice to see some people in the park as a result.
Wouldn't
Well-
it be weird if they finished first ahead of the Braves and got in that way, and the Braves got in as a second-place team with all the things that have happened over the years?
Well, we got to wrap up, and the season's on. Opening day in a couple of days. So Elliot Price will be back during the season. You'll be doing the games on CIQC, and you can also hear Elliot mornings on the Joe Cannon Show and the Aaron Rand Show on CIQC and Q92. Mitch, of course, on the Drive Show on CIQC from 5 to 6, and me,
Sunday night.
8 to 11.
Bye.
Take care.
Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear. Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.
Welcome to another edition of the Pete Mahovlich Show. Pete's guest today, Mitch Melnick, and myself, Mitch Garber. This is becoming a regular occurrence, and it's great. It's a lot of fun having you here.
Well, speak for yourself.
Yeah, no question about it. I'm here more than the furniture.
Let's put you on the spot right away. This is being aired after the 5th game of the Canadiens-Bruins series. Could be over, as far as we know. How far are the defending Stanley Cup champs going to go this spring?
Well, actually, I think that the Canadians, every time you think that they're going to be down and out, people show up that you don't expect, and all of a sudden they start winning games you think that they're not going to win. The big thing is their goaltending just continues to keep them in hockey games, and then all of a sudden other players respond. As far as the Boston Bruins is concerned, that's exactly why the Boston Bruins aren't going to go very far. Their goaltending is awful.
Let's talk about how good Patrick Roy is. I think he's the best goaltender in the NHL. I think Garber disagrees, but will accept now, maybe grudgingly, that if he's not the best, then he's certainly among the top 3. How good is he?
Well, I think, watching him play this year, having him seen last year in the playoffs, I've made a comment that he's the best that I've ever seen. And what he does is he doesn't let in any bad goals. He seems to be set for most goals. When he gets an opportunity to see the puck coming, he's going to stop it. That's one thing, Patrick. He gives up maybe, rebounds sometimes that are scored, or a second shot or a third shot. But I mean, you don't expect goal. All you're asking a goaltender to do is to stop the first shot and not to give up bad goals. Patrick does both. He does not give up bad goals, and he stops the first shot.
What I really like about him is when he's on is the coolness that he has. The other night we saw in Boston, he turned around to the gods in the Garden. Last year in the finals when he winked at Sandstrom in overtime through his mask. He's just in total control. He can get up in a dressing room and say, guys, you're going to get the next goal because I'm not giving one up, and that's what happens.
He did it against the Kings last year. He went into the room at intermission. He said, I'm not giving up another goal, so you may as well just get me one. I'm going to win this hockey game. He did it, didn't let up a goal. They scored one. I think Leclerc got that goal, and the game was over, and the Canadiens won. They came back to Montreal and won the Cup. I wouldn't grudgingly say that Patrick Roy is the best or one of the best. The reason why I've been consistently saying that I'm not so sure that he is so head and shoulders above the rest of the league, the goaltenders that is in the rest of the league, is he's playing in Montreal. He's had the best stats of any goalie probably over the last 5 or 6 seasons, but in a system where he has seen probably less shots. If you look at his shot totals over the last 5, 6 seasons, look at the quality shots. I know it's hard to measure that stat. There are goaltenders out there like Curtis Joseph, like John Van Beesbroek, who have faced a multitude of shots, quality shots, breakaways, that Patrick Roy just hasn't had to see because he plays for the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, we can't break that down, but I think Patrick Roy faces more shots and has faced more shots and quality shots in his time as a Canadiens goaltender than probably any other well-known Canadiens goalie in history.
No
this is
question
not a great
about that.
Canadiens team compared to the other teams.
That's a given.
Right.
That's a given.
You're absolutely right.
This is the weakest Canadiens defense that you have seen since either of us have been born and since way before Pete played hockey. No question about it. But again, you watch Patrick Roy, he makes the great saves, no question. He made the great save in Game 2 of the Boston Bruins series on Iafrate slap shot. That's a game-saving save right there. But if you watch the games in the other divisions, you see that there are so many more shots on goal. Curtis Joseph, Ed Belfour, Bill Ranford, John Van Beesbroek.
Don't put Ed
like
Belfour in that group.
Goalies like that have been seeing a lot more shots and more quality shots. But Patrick Roy,
It's not his fault.
on any of these teams, may be still the greatest goaltender that ever played the game, according to Pete, who played against Bernie Perron, played with Ken Dryden, played against Sawchuk. I mean, his opinion is a lot more valuable than mine is. But I'm just looking at Patrick and where he's playing and what kind of shots he's been facing.
Well, I think, you take a look at the shots that he does face. He faces a lot of quality shots, and that's where I think that there's a big misconception of what he's facing compared to what some of the other goaltenders are facing. I think that you have to take a look at exactly where he's at. His goals against was 3rd best in the league. His shot percentage was, save percentage was also 3rd best in the league. Dominic Hasek, of course, led both categories, had an outstanding year, and given the fact that if he could do that for another 2 years, I think then you'd have to really analyze and say, geez, where did this guy come from? What's he done? And, where is he going? And Martin Brodeur, who had a heck of a year in New Jersey, playing on a team that is probably a head and shoulders above the Canadiens as a group defensively, and the system that they are playing right now is not facing as many quality shots as Patrick, but still, you know, ended up with the second best goals against and the second best save percentage. But he looks exactly like Patrick Roy in the net. He plays exactly the same way. He faces the shots the same way. He goes to the butterfly exactly the same way. A very carbon copy of Patrick Roy.
I'll tell you one other reason why Patrick Roy has gone way up, even in my esteem, this season is I think he has played this year for not a great hockey team, not even a very good hockey team, just a really good bunch of guys who play well together. I think the most valuable assets to this team are Jacques Demers, Patrick Roy, Mike Keane, and Kirk Muller. Maybe a couple of other guys, but those are the guys.
Guy Carbonneau.
Had a real good year this year.
I think Carbonneau's a co-coach.
Is a captain. He's a captain for a reason.
Denny Savard was a co-coach last year, but didn't add much to the hockey.
Not like Carbonneau. Carbonneau was.
Guy Carbonneau is exactly what Kirk Muller is. He brings intensity to the game, every game, game in, game out. You take a look when the Canadians went 11 games without a loss. He goes south to Florida because the Canadians wanted to get a little rest. Canadians went south at the same time, okay? They ended up not winning a game for, I think it was 7 or 8 games. Guy Carbonneau means an awful lot to the Montreal Canadiens. He's their captain, and he brings intensity, and he's got character.
Yeah, I'm not knocking Guy Carbonneau. All I'm saying, Mitch, and you'll answer to this, is that
and there's other players there also. There's a good group. The one thing the Montreal Canadiens bring, they don't bring the names on the back of their sweaters. They bring the name of the front of their sweater to the game, which is most important.
You know,
which he's now wearing.
Yeah, which I'm now wearing.
Which
grudgingly.
As a host here at the studio, you have no understanding about. You don't know what it means to be on a team.
Not that team. Not
on
that
any team.
Not that team.
On any team.
No, not on any team.
You don't understand.
Let me tell you something, okay? Let me tell you something. There's a certain feeling in Montreal that the Canadians can do no wrong. There is a mystique. The Canadians are a great organization. They have been forever and probably will be forever. But hold on.
They make mistakes.
Let me finish.
No, they make mistakes. There's no question about that. Everybody
makes mistakes. Last year, they won the
mistakes.
Stanley Cup. They played against 4 teams, 2 of which didn't make the playoffs this year, one of which made the playoffs on the last day, the Islanders. And nobody wants to say that the Canadians lucked into a Stanley Cup last year. Because they're the Canadians, they must have had a great year and a great playoff year, and they didn't. They weren't even one of the best teams last year.
Everybody there that starts has an opportunity to win the Stanley Cup. As this year, I look at whoever wins the Stanley Cup this year has got a tough road to hoe. It doesn't matter whether it's going to be Boston, Montreal, San Jose, Detroit, whatever. Because they don't meet a certain team, you can't say that they don't deserve to win the Stanley Cup.
I didn't say every team that starts.
Every team that starts has the same opportunity.
Yeah, okay. Anaheim has the same opportunity at the beginning of the year to win the Cup.
No, because they're not going to make the playoffs.
So San Jose's in the playoffs. Same shot right now?
They have
Pittsburgh, Boston, the Canadians?
What happens if they beat Detroit?
Well, they won game 1.
Now,
but then we get back to the goaltender.
But does any team that doesn't meet Detroit, do they don't deserve to win the Cup?
Does any team that doesn't meet Detroit not deserve to win the Stanley Cup?
That's what you're saying. Because Montreal didn't face Pittsburgh last year. Because Montreal didn't face a certain team.
It's not a question
of deserve to win
They deserved it.
Well, then they deserved it.
They just weren't the best team. They backed into the Cup.
No, they were the best team
from April
They were the
to
best team.
June. They were the best team in hockey, and that's when it matters most.
They might not have had the best players, but they were the best team.
They had the best
That's
goalie.
what you don't understand.
They had the best goalie, and that's people say, well, you know, they lucked in with the 11 overtime wins. There was no luck involved. The reason they won the 10 straight in overtime was the goaltender. I think that's pretty obvious. When you win that many games in overtime, when you got a guy at the other end stopping everything, that enables you to eventually score a goal at the other end of the rink. And that's why I think Patrick Roy could, in fact, wear a C on his sweater.
Yes, yes. And he could, well, this was a year probably more than any in the last 30 where you could actually pick a goaltender to be the most valuable player to his team. In Buffalo, Dominic Hasek, okay? In Florida, Johnny Van Beesbrook. In Montreal, Patrick Roy. These were guys that carried their teams to where they were.
Arthur Zerbe in San Jose is another
Arthur
example.
Zerbe in San Jose is no question about it.
And you mentioned Brodeur.
Martin
Potvin
Brodeur.
in Toronto, and that's the key, right? That's the key at playoff time. Always has been, always will be.
I didn't mention Potvin because I'm not a Potvin fan.
Okay, we'll find out in the next few days, I suppose. But what I'm saying is that has always been the key in hockey and playoff hockey, and always will be, is goaltending.
Yeah.
And a team that doesn't get good goaltending is not going to go very far.
You've got to get good goaltending. But the one thing about the Montreal Canadiens more than any other team is the fact that they bring a team concept to the rink, and they bring a team concept to the game. Every game, game in, game out. Sometimes they don't play as well as they normally do, but the only way that the Montreal Canadiens can win is through a team concept, and everybody. You don't know who's going to score the goals. You don't know whether it's going to be DiPietro. You don't know whether it's going to be Muller. You don't know whether it's going to be Leclerc, Schneider, whoever. Whoever shows up, Desjardins, you just don't know. It's always somebody different. It's not Mario Lemieux every night or Wayne Gretzky every night.
Yeah, Desjardins is not one of my favorite players. I don't think it's one of.
He's one of my least favorite players.
But anyway, okay. Aside from the Canadiens now.
With good reason, by the way.
Aside from the Canadiens, who's going to win the Cup?
Well, initially I looked at Detroit as a pretty good team, but no goaltending. And I think that's going to hold true. I liked Calgary. They lost their first game 5-0. They outshot the opponent 13-6 in the first period, dominated the game, but didn't get the goaltending that Vancouver got. Vancouver got outstanding goaltending, shut them out. I like Calgary from the one division.
A lot of people like Calgary.
Okay. New York Rangers are going to still have a tough time, even though they're dominating the Islanders at the start. I think the Islanders went through a real tough last month of the schedule. Probably got to the and almost had to play like a couple of playoff rounds to get to the playoffs. Now they go and meet the Rangers. The Rangers are ready, rested, got their game plan to whoever they were going to play, and played it flawlessly. So the New York Rangers can be tough. And I still like the Montreal Canadiens because of Patrick Roy.
And you talk about the Canadiens, and you look at the rest of the team from out, the defense and forwards, and you go, a couple of guys. But what they have where a lot of teams don't have is depth. You look at the Canadiens' fourth line that they can send on the ice, and teams start to get pretty thin, other teams.
Very
well, their attitude towards what their fourth line can do for them is different than other people. Other people have these guys sitting on the bench, okay? We tend to call them goons, but they have a specific purpose. Theirs is not to go out and touch the puck. Theirs is to go out and touch people, okay, and bang bodies. While the Montreal Canadiens' fourth line is to be an aggressive forechecking line, to go out there and just dump the puck, dump chase, bump around, and all of a sudden these guys create penalties against them because all of a sudden they're starting to get their scoring opportunities. And that's where all of a sudden they take over the game a little bit. It happened in the second game in Boston. It wasn't the Kirk Mullers, Guy Carbonneau, Vinny Danfus won the game. It was a guy by the name of Pierre Sevigny went out, started banging bodies, created a couple of opportunities for the Canadiens to go on the power play that created those opportunities that kept the momentum going. If it's not for him, Pierre Sevigny, Ron Wilson.
Ron Wilson had a good game.
Okay, they don't
sitting
win that game
for a long time.
Right.
Well, they might have won the game because I still say that Boston goaltending was terrible.
That job he did in the first period, killing off penalties. I mean, that proved his value to the Canadiens for the entire year.
Sure,
that
the
one
5-on-3, and
yeah,
no question about it.
What do you think about? What do you think though?
Character person again. See, they bring in a guy. I mean, other organizations had an opportunity to get Ron Wilson. They didn't need him. They say they look at him. He's 36, 37 years old. Well, he's done. Canadians bring him in. 1, they know he's a character person. 2, the guy can skate.
3, Carbonneau was hurt at the beginning of the year, and that was the real reason they got Ron Wilson.
Well,
thinking Carbonneau may not come back. That was the reason given for picking up Ron Wilson.
That was probably the main reason, no question about it. But at least they also had to fill in for a couple of people that they lost in the draft, and also the fact that they lost Denis Savard. Even though Denis Savard was not going to play very much or whatever, he still would have been an asset for 40 games. They had to replace him somewhere with somebody. So what do they do? They don't concern themselves so much with, can a guy score 30 goals? Let's plug in a hole with a character person we know that's going to come and work and do the types of things for the team, not be worried whether he's going to be up in the stands or whether he's going to be on the bench. Not complain. Ronnie Wilson.
I want to get back to Desjardins for a minute. Do you remember the incident that
Yeah,
turned me
I know
off Eric Desjardins?
Sure. He dropped his glove.
5 seconds left in a game last year, playoff game against the Buffalo Sabres. He dropped his glove. Yuri Himalev's in front of the Canadiens' net with a few seconds left in the game. He reaches down to pick up his glove, Desjardins does, and Himmelev.
He left the Sabres player to pick up his glove. And
And
I thought that said a lot also. Nobody seemed to pick up on it except Mitch, but I thought that said quite a bit.
Anyway,
that was a year ago.
I was going to ask you, that was a year ago. I was going to ask you about the fact, I mean, I believe the Canadians, well, they deserve the cup because you get to play whoever's next. That's who you play. I agree with that. But I still maintain that they backed in, and you have the right to back in, because if Pittsburgh gets knocked off by the Islanders, hey, good for you. You play the Islanders. You'd rather play the Islanders
So this year
than
Pittsburgh might get knocked off by Washington. So
Could
maybe
happen.
Pittsburgh
Doubtful.
last year weren't
Yeah.
as good as they were supposed to be.
In the playoffs, they obviously weren't.
Obviously
And
not.
the Islanders were
It's the only
played their
time it
best
counts,
hockey
though.
for
It's
that
the only time
series.
it counts.
That's it.
Yeah, but the Islanders, for that series, played phenomenally. When they played the Canadians, they went back to being the Islanders. But my point is, if you're the Canadians, do you make no changes in the offseason? Do you consider yourselves the Stanley Cup champions, the best team in hockey?
I'm quite
stick
sure,
with your guns?
Mitch, I'm quite sure that they tried to make some changes. They tried to improve their hockey team, but how do you improve your hockey team in today's game?
It's such a
Normally-
young team also.
Yeah.
They're just waiting for guys to just
I just think
mature.
I think the Rangers have done an excellent job. I think Neil Smith and Mike Keenan
And if they
have done a
don't win
great
it
job.
this year, they are definitely the oldest by far. They're the oldest hockey club. Where do they go from there?
Well, they have no choice but to be in it to win it each year. I mean, they
That's
can't
it.
plan. They don't have the luxury of being able to plan.
They don't have the luxury to plan. They've got a very old team. They're going to try and win it this year. If they don't win it this year, then they're not going to win it again for a long time.
I can't see them not winning it this year. And talking about
I
great playoff goaltenders, Mike Richter is so far standing on his head.
Mike Richter's a good, solid goaltender, and until he gets really tested, until he lets in the bad goal, and he's going to let in a bad goal, okay? How he reacts, how the coaching staff reacts, and how the players react to that, and how the fans react will all have an impact on the New York Rangers and what they do from there on in.
It's a very good team. It's been built very well with one goal in mind. There's no question about it. And it would be, of all seasons that they've come close and got, I think the last time they made the semifinals was against the Canadians. I think in '86. Have they gone further?
I
than
mean,
That
that?
was one of the
I
best playoff series I think I've seen. Was that '86 series? That's where Patrick Roy played unbelievably.
And
The
he
first
beat- and
time
he
you
beat
saw
Van
Patrick
Beesbroek.
Roy playing unbelievably in the playoffs was the '86 season. And he
Well, that
did
was
beat
his first year.
Van Beesbroek
Right.
had a great series then, and you didn't see that brilliance in Van Beesbroek, I don't think, from that time until he joined the Florida Panthers.
Well, the way I was looking at it is I thought that New Jersey Devils were going to have an awfully tough time with the Buffalo Sabres. I thought Buffalo was going to really give them a real good run. And then I thought Buffalo would end up playing the New York Rangers and beating the New York Rangers also.
Is that the best? Who is your coach of the year? Now remember, these are awards that are based on the regular season only.
I thought John Muckler did the best job with all the circumstances that he had to contend with. The loss of LaFontaine, then the loss of Grant Fuhr. Everybody at probably at game 20 had the Buffalo Sabres out of the playoffs.
Can I throw mine in?
Sure.
Kevin Constantine doesn't get enough credit.
Kevin Constantine was my second choice.
I'm going to give you another one.
My third choice was Jacques Lemaire.
I think that's a good choice.
Okay.
So
I wouldn't vote for it. Lemaire, I think Lemaire.
We got the vote on it, so those are my three votes.
Okay. There you go.
But all three of them deserve it.
Right. You wouldn't have an argument if
No.
any of those three.
Why is Roger Nielsen not in there in your list of three?
Well, I'll tell you why. I looked at the draft this year. There were a lot of good players available, and it was proven that both Florida this year and Anaheim, okay, ended up with better records than Tampa Bay, who's been around for 2 years, and Ottawa Senators, who ended up drafting 2 years ago. They didn't have the players available to them, so these two teams ended up with better records than Tampa Bay and Florida. So, I mean, Anaheim ended up with as many wins as Florida did. So
How about if it's just the regular season, Brian Sutter, who's got shaky goaltending at best, who was without Cam Neely for a long stretch. Bruins had a very good year. I think the Bruins surprised a lot of people. I'm not. He wouldn't be my vote.
Me.
I'm just his name is never mentioned at all.
It didn't surprise me because I still think that the Boston Bruins up front have a pretty good, solid team. I mean, they have a good team. They didn't do anything that was spectacular. They ended up, they really didn't do anything that was very spectacular. Point-wise from last year, there wasn't much difference. So
I want to get back to something, Mitch, in this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. And granted, we've only seen 2 games so far between the Bruins and the Canadians. Heavy hitting seems to be the order of the day. And the Canadians are going to have to survive that heavy hitting. Desjardins got clocked, we all know, in Game 2. The Canadians have some real good hitters who aren't necessarily huge.
No.
Mike Keane being one of them, Pierre Sevigny, who's borderline huge.
John
He's a pretty
Leclerc.
big guy. John Leclerc.
Doesn't hit enough.
Well, he gets involved when he's
Imagine him
when
with a
he's
mean streak.
When he's put in the right situation with the right people, he knows what he has to do. He's got to go. When he's playing, the first game he didn't start at center with Bellows and Damphus. When he's playing center with Bellows and Damphus, he knows what he has to do. He goes out there, he's deep in the corners, he's banging, he's fighting for the puck. That's when he's most effective.
He's great in front of the net, and he's great causing traffic in front of the goaltender, and he mucks it up. There's no question. But I think if he used his body enough, considering his size, I think he'd be that much more dangerous. And speaking about hits, this is one of the best we've seen in years. This was a year ago in Los Angeles, coming up when Mike Keane was
Hardy, I think, hit him.
corked by former junior Canadian Mark Hardy. There we go. And Michelle Pfeiffer was among the people who were at ringside watching this. That was her reaction
Hi, Michelle.
as they showed it on the giant screen in Los Angeles. Pete, one of the best hits as they replaced the glass in Los Angeles that I remember seeing was Larry Robinson on Gary Dornhofer when he actually bent the boards. Here we go.
Mike must love watching this.
At least he braced himself.
Well, if he didn't see it coming, like Desjardins didn't see his coming this
Right.
year.
Yeah. Well,
But you remember Robinson on Dornhofer in the Philadelphia
Yeah.
Flyers series very early, and he broke the boards on
Yeah.
Dornhofer.
but you talk about the Canadians. There's a perfect example. Mike Keane. I mean, he just doesn't get enough credit for the things that he does. Because you're looking at the goals and the assists that people bring all the time. Well, he's not going to score you 80 points, okay? But he's a Montreal Canadian. He's the type of guy everybody in the National Hockey League would love to have on their team because he brings an effort every game, game in, game out. And is not really concerned about anything else but winning.
What don't you like about Felix Potvin?
I think that Felix Potvin is, he doesn't look as solid out there as some of the other goaltenders. I think he's a reactionary type goaltender. He attacks the puck, he waves at it. And when things aren't exactly right, he's waving at it, then it's in the net.
See, I think that I don't like Eddie Belfour as much as a lot of people do. I think Belfour lets too many incidents get to him, and he starts playing with himself with his head. The incident last year, which led to the winning goal, which knocked them out, he was totally irrational. The other night against the Leafs, he reacted the same way. And I think it's quite clear the Blackhawks made a mistake when you got Hasek in Buffalo and Belfour in Chicago.
Yeah.
When he's good, he's very, very good. And when he's bad, he's very, very
Belfour
bad.
is one of
That's really Ed Belfour.
Ed Belfour is.
I don't think he's capable of winning a cup.
I think the team isn't because of certain factions on that team. I think that they have too many players that are more concerned again by the name on the back of the jersey rather than what they wear on the front of their jersey. That's so important. And people say, well, yes, they've got this player, and this player. Well, there's a reason the Montreal Canadiens traded some of these players.
We're gonna see the Canadians skating around with the cup in just a moment. What was it like for you, the first time you actually got to embrace the Stanley Cup in a Canadiens uniform, got to hold it high over your head, and plan a kiss or two and maybe drink from it? What was that feeling like?
Well, everybody else was drinking champagne from it. I can remember back in '71, it was Chicago Stadium. We ended up, my first Stanley Cup was in Chicago. It was a fantastic feeling because we were not considered to be the favorites to win that year. We ended up beating Boston in 7. We went to Chicago, won in 7.
Don't forget Minnesota. They gave you a
Well,
tough
they
time.
gave us a tough time. We won in 6 against Minnesota, and it was a very tough series. And it was, of course, it was just so exciting. I mean, it's draining, and it's sort of a relief when it's all over. And of course, I didn't drink champagne at the time, so I had a Heineken beer.
He made a great point about the Canadians not making trades just for no reason. Every player I can think of almost that's been traded in the last 5 years from the Canadians has been traded for a reason off the ice, and not a reason on the ice. Other than Skrudland and McPhee, they weren't traded for
Well,
reasons
even
off the
Skrudland
ice.
had a problem with Demers. I mean, Demers was getting
Yeah.
fed up with his stupid penalties. I thought Denny Savard took just as many stupid penalties. That's Skrudland's style. This is, I guess, the cup clinching game at the Forum. Where were you? Were you watching this?
I was watching it down in Fort Worth, Texas, as a matter of fact.
Talk about the most overpaid, overrated coach in hockey, Barry Melrose. How he renegotiated his contract is beyond me.
Well, I think they renegotiated it for him. I
Well,
think that they opened
You know,
the doors up.
all
and
the you know, congratulations to him for having it done.
Well,
but-
there's the reason why Barry Melrose is still a coach, is Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems whatever Gretzky wants, the Kings get, even if it's to the detriment of the hockey team overall.
Well, that could be a problem, and I think that that's where sometimes, you know, even as great as Wayne Gretzky is, and probably thinks that all he's trying to do is what's best for the team, sometimes as a player you don't have an overview of what's really best for the team, and let the general manager make those decisions.
So were the Kings a fluke a year ago?
Well, they deserve to get to the finals, I guess, because they...
You use the words deserved, you know, real. Well, they did, I guess, but they beat the Leafs, and the Leafs were a real good team. I think
Well,
they,
they beat Vancouver, which was
they had a
supposed
tougher
to be...
road than the Canadiens
They
did to
were
get there.
supposed to be
Did
the
they
team
get
to
fat
get there.
this year then? How do you explain it? A finalist, a bad hockey stick, a measurement away from possibly winning the Cup to not making the playoffs the following year. If that doesn't make you
Well, they
hungry
made some
to
bad
come that
decisions.
close.
They made some bad decisions in the offseason.
Trading McSorley, idiotic move.
Well, Corey Millen. Corey Millen was a good hockey player for them. He ends up in New Jersey. For what? Nothing. So they made some bad business decisions, and that's the way it goes. I mean, sometimes you don't realize the value of certain players to your team until they're gone.
I'll tell you, there's no more amazing feeling than being in the Forum for a Stanley Cup win in '79. And
Well, the 4 years that I won the Stanley Cup, I won all 4 of them on the road. So I don't know the feeling.
well,
There's Carbo, by the way.
they won it in '79 at home. Bob Gainey won the Conn Smythe Trophy, and last year, just the building, anybody who's been to the Olympic Stadium can remember the years when the Alouettes had 65,000, and that was pretty amazing noise-wise. But this, because it's enclosed and not as many, and it's a little more intimate, it seems even more. And maybe we'll get another repeat. You think so?
They're going to be tough. I mean, I can't really say this team here is going to win a Stanley Cup.
There are no dominant teams this year.
No.
The Rangers have the best chance, the best odds of winning it, but there are no dominant teams. Pete, thanks again. It really is a lot of fun having you here.
Mitch, thanks.
Good thing you weren't playing on the CJD team against the IQC. We would have turned you inside out.
No comment.
All right, we'll
I
be
think it
back
would have been a lot tougher to beat them with this guy.
All right, we would have turned him inside out. He would never have solved Melnick in the net. Anyway, we'll be back again next week for another edition of the Sports Hot Seat. So join Mitch Melnick and myself, and thanks again to Pete Mahovlich.
Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear. Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.
Welcome to another edition of the Sports Hot Seat. I'm Mitch Garber with Mitch Melnick. And Mitch, today I got to let you introduce our guest because he's a lot of things. He's a super fan. He's a taxi driver in Montreal for 35 years. He's the father of a very old and dear friend of yours, and he's very well known in this city for a whole bunch of other reasons.
Well, that's a pretty good introduction right there. He's probably the most famous taxi driver in the city, and certainly the most famous Expos fan. In some cases, some former Expos would say most infamous fan. Commonly known as Manouche, and we'll get into why he's called Manouche a little later. He is, in fact, Gerry Price, father of Elliot of CIQC and Expos Baseball. It's a pleasure to have you in with us.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, you've been getting a lot of playing time lately. Ron Roosh did a special, the Expos Year in Crisis, which I think everyone would agree this is. And you were the only, I guess, non-official baseball person who was interviewed on that show.
Well, not that I have to brag, but not many people have seen more ball games than I have, and talking under the major league level. And also I go to spring training every year since 1971, and I think I know a little bit about baseball.
1969, season ticket holder from 1969 through 1993. Not a season ticket holder in 1994. How come?
Well, I don't know how you call this justice, but a fan like me who's been a baseball fan and a season ticket holder for 25 years, and you raise my ticket from $15 to $22. As you know, I'm only a cab driver, and I have to be able to afford this year. So I've decided that I want to go to spring training for a month, and I gave up my season tickets.
But you could conceivably go to ball games for a lot less money than $22.
No question about it. I'm fairly on an age. I can go as a senior citizen for $3, which is an excellent buy. I also have a lot of friends who have season tickets, and once in a while, my son Elliot will get me a free ticket.
It's fair to say you're a baseball junkie, baseball freak. How did it start, this addiction to baseball? When and how did it start?
I've been a baseball freak, I could say, since I'm maybe 3 or 4 years old. I could remember I lived on City Hall Street, and I used to take a ball and bang it up against the wall. And my mother used to go nuts, and all I ever thought about was baseball. When I became 14, I went to every Royal game as much as I could. I used to bump school just to go to, we used to start in the afternoon in those days. I used to not go to school, just to go to a ball game. And as I got 15 and 16 years old, I used to travel to the city of the All-Star game just to watch a ball game, save up my few dollars, and with $100 you can go on vacation in those days. Today it costs that just to buy a ticket.
Well, being a super fan is one thing, and taking it another step and following a team around, going to different cities, and being as vocal as you have been for 25 years, going on 26 now, is taking it to another level. Were you like that as a kid? You were always mouthy?
Always. Very, very vocal. I could remember guys like Jimmy Gentile begging me just to leave him alone. Bobby Wilson once came in the stands after me, and I said to him, hit me, I need the money.
But you got a kid, that was part of your entertainment, going to the ball games, was yelling at the guys, whether on the Expos or on the opposing team, who weren't delivering what you considered to be your money's worth.
That's exactly. I only rip guys who I don't think give out. If I pay my dollar, I want entertainment, and they have to put out for me. They have 3 hours a day. That's all they have to put out for me. And if they don't, they hear from me.
I want to just interject for a minute, because Mitch, you've known Gerry for I don't know how many years, 20?
Not that long,
15?
Since about 12 years.
So you may think that some of the things that he does are normal. I've only learned of them a few minutes ago before we went on the air, and I'll tell you, he scores not only every Expo game, every game he watches on television. Those that he can't watch on television, he has tapes delivered to him, and then scores the games at home watching the games on tape.
He's got his own league, right?
I have my own statistics for every game that I can tell you. Terry Enyart, 1 error.
Lefty.
That's my statistics with Terry Enyart.
He was a lefty pitcher.
That's right. And that's my statistics with him. 1 error. He remains in my Expo statistics for life.
What was the last time you watched a game, 9 innings or more, and didn't score it?
Never happened.
That's your stat. Never happened.
Not even internationally. Never happened.
So you...
I drive my cab. I listen to the Expos play. I scored a game. People look
I'm sure
at me.
your
What are you doing,
passengers are
sir?
thrilled.
What are you doing, sir? I'm marking a ball game.
Now, you've had some pretty famous passengers in your cab, right?
Oh yeah, I've driven a lot of famous people. I've driven Gordie Howe. I've driven Bobby Hull. I've driven Wayne Gretzky. I had Gretzky, Messier, and Kevin Lowe in my car at the same time. They went to a football game here in Montreal, and Edmonton Eskimos were playing. I don't know, was it Concords or the Alouettes in those days? And I had the 3 of them in my car at the same time.
Hey, there's the day when $1 million was $1 million, Gerry. On the screen.
And there's 6 of them right there. What was your feeling as someone who grew up without a major league team in your city when you did get one in 1968 and the first year 69?
Well, when you don't have anything, you don't miss it. So to me, I don't know how you say it, outside of my children, outside of my birth of my children, the greatest thing that could happen to me is to go to a ball game. I mean, I don't know what people like in life. I don't know what you like in life. To me, I love baseball so much. I could remember my late wife, when the Expos used to lose, and I used to come home, she used to say, oh, the crazy guy's coming, and she used to put herself under the cover and make herself like she's sleeping. And I used to take baseball really, really to heart. I mean, it doesn't bother me now that the Expos don't win. I'd love to see them win, don't get me wrong. But like, I don't take it, since my heart attack in 1989, I learned that there are things in life beside baseball.
Not many.
Not many. But I was still rather,
None as important.
I would still rather go to a baseball game than eat supper. Or go with a woman.
I didn't know you had a heart attack. Did you become less vocal and less freaked out
No.
after the heart attack?
No. I became less vocal for only one reason.
They were a better team.
No. I have a son by the name of Elliot, who was a broadcaster for the Montreal Expos. Now, I don't want to harm his situation in any way. And I was told that if I would tone myself down, Elliot would get the job. And it happened.
So let me ask you this then.
And I'm happy.
Let me
I
ask you
veil
this.
very little.
Let me ask you this. What could bring you more pleasure than for your son to be the play-by-play guy
Nothing.
for the Montreal Expos?
Nothing. It's the dream that I've had all my life. All my life is to be a broadcaster. But my days when I went to try and get the job, as you guys have, I was told that I have to have X amount of school years, which I didn't have. I only finished grade 7.
I don't have either, Gerry.
No, I'm just saying. But you guys don't need it anymore. With me, I applied for jobs, and each one told me, not enough schooling. Today, I mean, I speak to, like Bob McDevitt, I've been on the show a few times. He couldn't believe a guy like me never got into like some broadcasting. You know, I mean, my voice is pretty good, and my knowledge is
Voice is pretty good. Who is the guy that you rode the most, the Expo?
The
Through
guy that I
years.
ripped the most?
Yeah.
I would say Terry Francona.
Why?
Well, he did a certain incident in spring training. I had a friend, his girlfriend liked Terry Francona. So I said to Terry, can you do me a favor? I need an autographed baseball for a woman that likes you. Oh, he said to me, no problem. This is at 12 o'clock on a spring training game that starts at 1. And at 1 o'clock, I'm still standing there waiting, and he keeps telling me 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. He never gives me the ball. And I start to yell at him during the game. I mean, that Mr. Bronfman himself asked me why you're yelling at him. I said, I don't need his baseball. All he had to do was tell me no. You make me stand there for an hour like an idiot. And then during the season, they were going to send him down. And he came over to me. I still have a picture of myself with arguing with him in the Gazette. And he comes over to me and he says to me, it's your fault. You ripped me out and you made me into this and that. And it's your fault that they want to send me down. And I said to him, I don't even acknowledge you as a person. And I give it to him pretty good for about a year.
And now he's managing Michael
And now
Jordan.
he's managing Michael Jordan.
With Francona, before we get to this, oh no, Schmidt thing, Francona was a guy on a plane who burned the Canadian $2 bill during the last trip in back to Montreal at the end of the season as an indication of how upset he was about having to return to this city. So I also think that spoke volumes about Terry Francona.
You know, I even told him that you should be ashamed to be Tito's son. I told it to him to his face. This guy would have left to kill me.
A lot of people would.
But he was a great hitter. If he hadn't ripped up his knee, he could have won a batting title.
100%. He was a tremendous ball player. I mean, this guy won the Athlete of the Year award.
Okay, your take on what we just saw, part of the reason why the Expos didn't win when they should have won at some point, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83. Your take on why they didn't win.
The reason, there's not even a question in my mind. If you watch Toronto, whatever they need, they go out and get. The only time that we ever went out to get anything, in 79, 80, 81, 82, we're one player away. If they go out and get that one ball player, I don't know what money, not big money involved in those days, if they go out and get that one ball player, we might have won it. We gambled guys like Milner, and we brought Staub back. Staub, who was such a tremendous ball player, who even after he left us was a good ball, for some reason did not play good for us and wanted to play good for us. But in 89, when we dealt for Langston, that's the only year. I mean, you know, you'll have to be a little bit mad at the trade to give up a Randy Johnson. But
they got Rondell White out of it.
No, but no, I'm not mad. I mean, I'll make the trade again tomorrow. We're in first place. We get this guy's a tremendous pitcher till today. There's no question that Leinster's a tremendous, not good, he's a tremendous pitcher. And that's the trade that I would still make again.
I agree with you.
Unfortunately, I think we went 0-6 in September, and that was our problem. We didn't win.
They did go out and get, not only did they get Langston, and when they got even closer, they went out and got Candelaria, although he didn't pitch well. They got Jim
right.
Dwyer to come off the bench.
And Candelaria never pitched good for us either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but in 79, 80, 81, 82, we won more games than any team in baseball. Not to win a pennant, to win a fluky division there with a short season, but never to win a pennant with those guys. And that was a good ball club.
So you're not a McHale fan? Or are you a McHale fan?
Oh, definitely not. Mikhail and I, in fact, turned out to be total enemies. I ripped him in those days for not getting us ball players. That I was at a World Series in '84, and came up this year's story, and someone said to him, who does he think he is, an authority of baseball? And I was with this guy, Johnny Elias. And Johnny Elias said to him, you know, I'll tell you a story. Here's a man that pays every year. He has his own season tickets. He knows his baseball. And if he's a little bit vocal, then he has a right to be. And he backed away.
So speaking of the man who pays for all his tickets, I mean, you're Joe fan. Well, you're more than Joe fan. But the way the game is going right now, and we'll talk about Montreal in a minute, but the way the game is going, building new stadiums, luxury boxes, having to charge more money for food, to pay players. The Blue Jays pay $50 million. The Expos pay $20 million. There's disparity even there. It affects Joe Fan, who drives a taxi, who could pay $3, but is saying, well, why can't I sit closer to the action? It's just not like that anymore.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I mean, but the unfortunate thing is that the ball player whose salaries escalated, where the cab drivers just got a little bit better. You know, I mean, I'll be very honest. I lived better 20 years ago making less money as a cab driver than I make today. I mean, I don't work very much today. I'm old, you know. I'm not an old man, but driving 35 years a cab, I'm what you call burnt out. So I can't afford to go out and earn the money that I used. I could work 15, 16 hours a day. If I work 3 hours, it's a lot.
So you understand why your seats became $22 or $25?
No, you can't raise 44%. You want to raise me $2, $3 a ticket? By all means. To raise $7 on a $15 ticket?
And
Positively not.
And if the difference is between the survival of the team in this city and not, what do you choose?
Well, I don't have a say in this matter because it's guys like, if you watch the Montreal Expos, they draw 12,000, 14,000 people. They're in a pennant race in September and they can't get 25,000 people. So it's not up to me because I'm still going to go to the ball game. And if I have to, I'm still going to pay for a ticket. I won't pay $15 for a ticket, but I'm still going to go to every ball game. I mean, I've only missed in 25 years 75 games at the most. And that's because I'm a Jewish man and I don't go to ball games on my Jewish holidays. Otherwise, I maybe would miss none.
But they sold all those tickets. The
Which
tickets that they raised, the VIP seats, those are all sold.
Yeah, they sold those, but what about the people that took those tickets were from the lesser tickets, but they didn't sell those lesser tickets. Last year they had 8,500 season tickets. This year 7,000.
But more money came from this year's 7,000 than from last year's 8,500. And that's the name of the game. They're trying to generate more
less
money.
revenue in the ballpark. You get less people in the ballpark. People spend less money. They're gonna make as much money from 7,000 from 8,500 without a question in seat selling, but not in revenue what they bring into a ballpark.
Well, they'll probably make more in revenue in the ballpark because now they run all the concessions where they used to have all the different franchises running them. They're not in good shape.
Sorry.
Oh, there's no question. It's going to be the sorriest day of my life, outside again of losing a parent or But when Montreal Expos are definitely going to be moving out of the city. I mean, there's no way that this year's city can have a major league ball club. You can't have it on 12,000 people. We don't have enough fans to come to the ball game. This is not a major league city for drawing people.
Even if the team wins.
But you can't win every year.
The only thing that could help him is they have to win. But if they win now in '94 and they don't win in '95, we'll go back to being what we were in '93.
What happened between Delormier Downs, 79, 80, 81, where they were drawing over 2 million a season, and now? What happened between these three eras?
You're joking. Toronto. You go to Toronto, you look at the ball fans, and I know people who were All my friends many years ago, 75% of these guys live in Toronto. They get 45 and 50,000 a game.
So the 3 million that have stayed here will not produce a fan base, is what you're saying.
I would say that most of the good Anglophones that came to the ballpark, I could remember we had our own section. We used to sit 50, 60 guys all together in Royal Stadium. I really don't understand till today why these same guys that I watch, many of them are dead, but the guys even who are alive and are 65 and 70 years old, how they don't still go to a ball game, I don't understand it. I don't know what they do with their life.
You have become a Blue Jays fan?
100%. I cheer for the Blue Jays, 100%.
What do you like about them?
They're a Canadian team, and they're a winner. And they give me more ball games. Can you imagine living in Montreal and I get more Toronto games on my TSN station than Montreal Expo games? Montreal give 25 games only. You know, I'll tell you the truth. You might think I'm not normal, but every night when the Blue Jays are blacked out here on TSN, it comes on at 3 a.m. I tape this game and I mark it the next day.
I didn't need that to think he wasn't normal, but
Tell us about John Bateman. Because I'm going to I'll preface your answer by telling you that Bateman for years didn't come to the city once he retired. Goes to one of those old timers games, first time, steps out of the dugout. After all these years in Montreal, the first voice he hears on the field at Olympic Stadium is Manouche welcoming him back, and it wasn't a friendly welcome.
John, you're a bum. I'll tell you, I had a great, also a picture of that also in the Gazette one day. I used to rip this guy immensely. This guy couldn't hit, he couldn't field, he couldn't run, he couldn't do a thing. How he got into Major League, I don't know. And this guy here, and one day I said to him, you know, John, and I'm yelling, and I used to sit in, I think it was section 105 in Gerry Park, and I'm really giving it to him, and I said to him, John, you want to hit that ball? You think it's my head. And as that ball comes, I said, you hit it. And I tell you, he hits the longest home run of his lifetime. And he comes around the bases, and he walks over to me, and he takes off his cap, and he bows down to me. And Gene Mock ripped him to him and said, you're going to start with this guy? He said to him. And after that, every time he didn't hit the ball or he didn't get a hit, I used to yell to him, bow down now, Big John.
Any other players who used to rip acknowledge you?
Oh, yeah, like Bob Bailey.
Is that your favorite right there?
By all means. Gary Carter,
Yeah.
the nicest human being I've ever met as a ball player in my entire life. I've never heard this guy say no to me. You know, I'll tell you another good story. I had a woman, her name was Sarah. She was about 80 years old. She came over to me one day, she said to me, are you Mr. Manouche? I said, yes. She says, you know, when you die, 150 kids are going to say to you that you got them an autographed ball by Gary Carter. I've never seen this man say no. I sat to him in West Palm Beach this year for 3 innings.
Yep.
I could not believe if he didn't sit in 3 innings to sign 300 autographs. And I said to him, Gary, how do you still do it? He's Gary.
What a day that was 2 years ago, the last at bat.
we'll cut it. We'll cut it before Laker comes in and takes his place at second base.
I'll tell you one thing, it has to be one of his main thrills. In fact, I said to him, Gary, when you're going into the Hall of Fame, which I believe he is, I don't know if everybody believes, but I definitely believe he is. I mean, a man who got the most games and
It's got to be
300 home runs as a catcher. And I said to him, Gary, when you go into the Hall of Fame, which cap are you wearing? And he said, Montreal Expos.
Did you get to know Pete Rose at all the year that he spent here?
Well, I got to know him a little bit. I mean, in fact, my son who works in Florida, Jeffrey, he was there for a while, and he met him one day in the flea market, and they were talking about it, and he said to him, I remember your dad pretty good. He's the one who yells.
You don't think there's any doubt he should be in the Hall of Fame?
Without a question in my mind. I mean, a man who has the most hits in the history of baseball. It's not just, I mean, they have to prove that he bet on baseball, which they didn't. What people think is another thing, but they have to prove it. And if they don't, Pete Rose should definitely 100% be in the Hall of Fame.
You know what the thing that people who want him in the Hall of Fame say, people who have been watching baseball for as long as Gerry has, is there are so many guys in that Hall of Fame who have done so much worse
Positively.
than Pete Rose has done. That it's really a travesty to the game of baseball not to look back and see I mean, like every other walk of life, there are rapists, robbers, thieves, fraud artists in that Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Oh, 100%. Plenty of them.
Racists.
Ty
Cobb was a
Cobb
misery.
was
You'll all be watching the movie with Tommy Lee Jones this summer. He was one of the most miserable human beings that ever walked the planet. And he's there. And he was also involved in a gambling scandal, and yet he stays in the Hall of Fame.
And the commissioner of baseball, Landis, acknowledged that he was involved in gambling. If you read his book, I have his book. Of course, I have many.
You
but
have. Tell us if we walked into your place, what would we see?
What would we trip over?
I have maybe 3,000 programs. I have 900 hardcover sport books. I have 5 full bookcases.
Do you have room for anything but a TV and a VCR?
Do you need anything other than a TV and a VCR?
It's a monument to baseball, right?
Well,
What's your most prized possession?
I don't keep anything. That's to me. The books that I have. I only get books autographed. I have no autographs of baseballs. I give all my autographed baseballs and I get them for my grandchildren. I don't keep them for myself. A baseball, it doesn't thrill me. The only thing I have, their books. If I can get them autographed, I get them autographed. Like I have Stan Musial, Ted Williams. If I can get them autographed, that's the only autographs that I keep.
Quick story about Manouche and how it affected me briefly. I walk into the Expos clubhouse one night after a game. Mike Fitzgerald signals me over. He says, your dad is getting real loud. And I'm looking around, and he's talking to me. And I said, Mike, that's Elliot's father. I'm Mitch. That's Elliot's father you're talking about. And he apologized. Oh, I'm sorry. And he must have said something to Elliot after that, because on more than one occasion, people have confused Elliot and I, because especially when we used to work together.
Your voices are very similar.
But have you spared anybody that you didn't like as a ball player, that you decided for whatever reason that you weren't going to get on them?
No. If I don't like the guys, in trouble.
After deep reflection.
In fact, Mike Fitzgerald, with all reflections to your good buddy Terry Hago, I think doesn't know too much about baseball. When he told me, the day I stopped talking to Terry Hagan, the day I stopped calling your show because of him, is because he told me that Mike Fitzgerald is the 3rd greatest clutch hitter the Montreal Expos ever had. I lost my respect for him that day. Mike Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald was a heady guy who caught a good game, handled the pitching staff very well, wasn't an easy out, came up with the occasional big hit, and I think injuries to his hands really ruined what would have been, I think, a decent major league career.
In 1985, the New York Mets had 5 catchers. He was listed number 5, and he never got higher on my list.
Okay, let me ask you about the argument about, you mentioned booing before, and I liked what you said, if you felt that a guy wasn't putting out, and I agree. I once booed Willie Davis at Gerry Park. He loafed, he misplayed a fly ball to center field, and he loafed all the way back to the center field wall. It was an inside the park home run. He heard it from me the next time he came to the plate. But I think if a guy is bad, or screws up on the field, or makes a fielding error, then I don't think you should boo just because he's not playing up to your expectations. If he's trying out there, why boo?
I have never booed a ball player for an error. Believe me, never. I boo a ball player, like I say, for their attitude. Like, you take the same Gary Carter. I booed this guy in 77, 78 unmercifully.
You booed him?
Yeah. I used to boo Gary Carter. Because Gary Carter came up as the phenom. Yet he wasn't the phenom in 77, 78. And I could still remember, I was in West Palm Beach in 1979, and his wife Sandy came over to me and said to me, Manouche, it's about time you left Gary alone. And I looked at her and I said, you know something? You're right. Because he's becoming the ball player that I expected him to be. And I think we could win. And I have never booed Gary Carter since that day.
How do you boo a guy for other people saying he's supposed to be a star? Do you boo Cliff Floyd if he hits 200?
Do I boo Cliff Floyd? No, but I wouldn't. I'm not talking about on 1 year. But if 3 years from now Cliff Floyd is at the same level, I would definitely boo Cliff Floyd.
You ever booed the Shields?
Well, of course. I mean, that's some pretty rough ones. Shields was another one of these guys that only played when he wanted his first year or two. And this guy, it goes to show that I'm right, that this guy was a better ball player than he played in his first 2 years here.
I'm kind of tired of talking about the DeShields trade, but I think we'd be doing a disservice to our viewers if we didn't ask Jerry Price his position on the Delino DeShields trade.
Well, I would never have changed the Delino DeShields because I don't have a second baseman to take his place. I don't think Mike Lansing is a major league starter. In fact, you couldn't tell me too many teams that this guy Mike Lansing could make. I mean, you media, I don't know, you guys or the media has made Mike Lansing into a tremendous ball player. So I would never have traded Delino DeShields because I can't replace Delino DeShields. Had I traded, and as much as I don't want to trade a Grissom or a Walker, as much
you
as
had a Rondell White.
Exactly. I have a Rondell White, a Curtis Pride, a Cliff Floyd. I could replace my outfielder. I can't replace the line of the Shields. And also, from what people tell me, and I'm people who know that the Shields was a very, very big factor in the clubhouse.
Absolutely.
So he was a tremendous guy that the Montreal Expos, but it's strictly money. You know, next year you're going to trade Walker. Or he's going to go. They just can't keep these guys.
Claude Rochoux insists it was a baseball move that Dan Duquette made on his own.
Well, he's the only one in the city who continues to say that.
Well, but he's in a position to say it.
But I think he's trying to justify the move, and I think it's about time he just leveled with people.
I would accept if it was a money move.
Yeah, I think people would understand the situation. But
That's right.
Don't try to pretend it's not about
but
money.
I don't believe that anybody could make a trade without Brashear giving his okay, money-wise. I don't believe.
How did Gerry Price become Manouche?
Well, in 1939, there was a ball player by the name of Henry Hinkle Heine Hank Manouche. My friend found this baseball card. This guy's a pretty good ball player.
Detroit, right?
330. That's why he played Detroit, Washington, Boston. 330 lifetime batting average. Too bad I haven't got my jacket. I would show you. I keep his card in my pocket. And one of my friends, I was a pretty good ball player, and I was a little bit of a funny kid. So when they found the name Henry Hinkle Heine Hank Manouche, this guy Normie Endler, I don't even know where he is today. He's a teacher somewhere in Chicago. Said, geez, let's call him Manouche. I've been on Manouche since that day.
I'd like to see that name on the back of a sweater.
I tell you something better, that when I was young, if you called me Gerry, I didn't turn around.
And today?
Well, today a lot of people call me Gerry.
Yeah.
Because when you get married and your wife doesn't like the name Manouche, so she insists that a lot of guys call you Gerry. And today a lot of people do call me Gerry.
Well, Gerry, we'll see you at the ballpark. I hope.
I guarantee
He's
it.
there.
All
He's
right.
there.
He's not.
I tell you what I'll do with you. I guarantee I'll go to every game.
Well, then we'll see you at every game. It's been a pleasure having you on the Sports Hot Seat. Mitch Melnick and I will be back again next week with another edition of the Hot Seat. And until then, thanks for watching. Gerry Price.
Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Place Alexis Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.